Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Joel, I'm kind of glad that I don't come up with the topics anymore because Jen does that for us. And the reason I'm glad of it is that I can let go of having to come up with the topics.
Letting go is a good idea.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But it has inspired Jen because she wants to know more about letting go. And in fact, she was telling us about it in the context of relationships, but it really applies in all areas of life. And we haven't really talked about that in a while. So maybe we should spend an hour on that one.
Well, exactly. And I love that. It's a great topic because the statement letting go is just superficial compared to the concept of letting go.
Yeah, no kidding.
What most people don't grasp is the stuff we need to let go of are the things that are out of our control.
Yeah.
So the idea that other people, but you can't control other people, so you got to let them go. You got to let their behavior go. You can't change that. So most of the problems that I deal with are people who cannot let go of things they can't control, and that's what starts with. You create yourself anxiety by what we worry about. You can't control what we're worrying about, but yet we still worry about it. And so that's the danger of it is, especially when it comes to how we use the law of attraction, because that anxiety that's associated with letting go often puts us in that very anxious, if not depressed mood. And that really influences how we're sort of attracting things in our life. So the inability to let go and move on and not try to control every single thing is foreign to most people.
It is foreign to most people. It's an interesting topic, though, within the larger circle of people who are interested in law of attraction, spiritual stuff, all that kind of thing. And in fact, I've just realized as we're talking about this that I encountered it in one of those Facebook discussions. Somebody was posting about how they were trying to get a mate or something to, change behavior pattern. And I wrote back, why are you wasting your time on that? and I got a comment from somebody that says, well, why not do it? I mean, it can be done. You can influence somebody. And I wrote back basically saying, well, yeah, it is possible under certain circumstances, especially if it's somebody who's completely out of control of their own alignment. They have no idea how any of this stuff works. It is possible to influence them, but why would you want to? And I couldn't think of a reason beyond that, so I just kind of left the post at that. But to me, that's the big issue. Why do you want to? Why is it so important to gain control over somebody else?
But that you'll see that in codependent relationships of all types.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that if I hear this all the time, if so and so would just do this, things would be great.
Yeah.
If they would just stop drinking, if they would just stop smoking pot, if they would just stop shooting heroin, if they just stop gambling, whatever their statement is, if they'll just stop, everything would be fine. And now the person saying that can't control whether that person stops or not at all. But they're creating themselves anxiety. They create anxiety within themselves. And again, the definition of codependence is when other people's mood, their inability, your mood is dependent on other people's mood. And so you're trying to make them do a certain thing. And so the idea that you can make someone behave a way you want them to behave and then be happy with them. It's why relationships fall apart.
That's right.
It's not understanding that we can't place ourselves in a category where somehow we're omnipotent and we get to tell people what they need to do. And it's what you do is what you try to do is find people that are like-minded, that you're attracted to, who are already on that vibration. One of the problems a lot of times, people that are in families, you're born into a family, you're born into that. And so there is a bias or a belief that we got to take care of our family at all costs, no matter how dysfunctional the family is. So you put a lot of energy into that. And in reality, the person that is never going to change, but yet the family is constantly going to be in the orbit of that. And so letting them go is not negative. It's just you can't fix it. And often they're stuck in the cycle. And because you won't let them go, you're actually endangering them by keeping them in the loop.
Yes. as I think you know, one of my favorite cartoons is The Far Side, and
Yes.
there's a Far Side that I really love. It's a single frame of a dog that had been chasing a car. You know, the classic dog trying to chase the car.
Yeah.
Only in this case, in the frame, you see the dog with his jaws clamped around the rear wheel of the tire of the car. And in other words, he finally caught it for the first time.
Yeah.
And the I don't remember the exact caption, but the caption was something along the lines of, "Now what do I do?"
Yeah. Now, yeah. Well, well,
And the reason I mentioned that one, I love that one, first of all, but the reason I mentioned it is it kind of fits into the same category. What we're when we're talking about trying to use the law of attraction in order to make somebody else behave the way or think the way that we want them to think, they don't actually think about, well, then what happens after that? Okay,
sure.
so let's say you actually were able to pull it off. You were actually able to get somebody else to behave the way you want them to. So you're in control of them, you're in control of their behavior, and so forth. Then what? And they never go that far.
Well, and by the way, I a tiny bit of disagreement with you is I don't think somebody may capitulate or agree briefly. You're not
Well, yeah, there's
changing
that
it.
too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you're not really changing somebody. Like, for example, one of my funny relationship stories, we never talk about, and I have some crazy relationship stories, especially the stripper era, but that's
Okay.
different. Yeah. Yeah. So, but this wasn't the stripper area. So years ago, I was living in South Carolina. I had a really nice townhome, and I met this lady at the gym, and she was that. In fact, ironically, that's how all my relationship stories start, pretty much for the last 25 years.
What
So,
a shock.
yeah, yeah. So we're very compatible. We're joking. She was substantially younger than I was, so I wasn't going to ask her out. And finally, one day, she said, "Hey, you're not going to ask me out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm too old." And she's like, "No." So we ended up having a really fun relationship. Just not
Nice.
serious, but we'd work out, we'd go out to eat. I love to go to movies, and she'd go, and she'd drag me to her crappy movies, and I'd drag her to my awesome movies. And so we had a lot of good stuff going on. So we'd been dating about 6 months, and she said, you want to go with me look at my new apartment? I got to find a new apartment. My lease runs out. I'm like, well, I mean, I got this huge townhome. If you want to move here, I can either get an extra room if you want, or whatever you want to work out. But you could be here, and if you want to. And she said, that sounds like a great idea. So she moves in, and the first week or so is pretty good.
Mhm.
And then the second week, she said, you go to the gym too much. And I thought she was joking because she literally met me by me going to the gym every single
Right.
night. So,
Right.
yeah. So I just sort of laughed and moved on. And so the next night I get home after the gym, she said, I thought I told you go to the gym too much. You need to cut
Oh.
back. And I go, no, I don't. She said, well, so we have 2 or 3 nights. And then finally I get a message from her, a note. This is, just a handwritten note on the table. The next morning she went to work. She's a nurse. And so she wrote, I'm serious. You need to stop going to the gym too much. It's either the gym or me. So
There you go.
on the note, I just wrote, I completely understand. Please leave your key on the table.
Mm.
And I wish you well.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly that was not the response she wanted. Now, there wasn't going to be a scenario where I wasn't going to the gym. So I don't know what was behind all that.
Who knows?
Because now she left, which it was pretty much uneventful, her leaving, except I had about $300 worth of steaks in her freezer, and she stole those. So she got me back by stealing my steaks. Still worth it. Didn't cost me much else. But my point was, she really thought that I was going to stop going to the gym because it's like there was not going to be a chance. There would never be a relation. I would be in a wrong relationship because anybody that understand the value of me working out and what it means to me, not just for strength and size and muscles, but psychologically, would not be a good partner for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So but I just find it fascinating that she was all into it.
Yeah.
And then we dated all it, but once we sort of moved in together, that didn't last 3 weeks.
And what you're talking about there kind of aligns with what I was mentioning. Okay, you get the person under your thumb, at least temporarily, and then what? And,
Right.
and that never actually gets played out in the mind for some reason. I
Right.
mean, we have a tendency to skip that part. Because
Right.
if we actually explored that, we'd realize just how dumb it is to try to get somebody else to behave the way we want them to behave. But we don't
Right.
go through that.
Well, and that's sort of the point of the understanding of just when you try to focus too hard on something you want, you repel it. You want it too much. So the letting go and sort of the letting go and sort of let them do what they want to do, then that has the potential for a really positive bond with a relationship, because you'll be able to do that. But when you're not compatible at the level of, I don't want to be on a time clock. I don't want to be, if a relationship is cumbersome for me, I just don't want to be in one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that it's not supposed to be that way. So I just simply allow myself to, let me go do what I'm going to do. You go do what you're going to do. We're going to do some stuff together, of course. But I gotta let go of people who aren't sort of on this vibrational level with me and how I'm living life. I don't worry about stuff. I don't stress about stuff.
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine having a relationship with somebody who's constantly worried with anxiety about everything, or
It
constantly
can't
trying
work.
to. That would be the opposite. I'm not being critical of the other people, but letting people go that aren't matching where you're at isn't mean it's healthy.
And from my perspective, I'll take it a step further. I'll say that the ideal relationship, whether it's a primary relationship or just a friendship or a business relationship or whatever, the ideal relationship is where the way you feel about the other person, the way the other person feels about you, you're celebrating whatever it is that they're doing. Even if
Absolutely.
it's not something that you like, the fact
Yeah.
that you're enjoying it, you're celebrating. Yeah, you go. I'm glad you're doing that because I know how much you love that.
Of course, that's what you're wanting. You're wanting that and that connection. So and not just relationships, but just letting go of what your expectation of life was.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things you can let go of.
Right.
The idea that I think when we're at a certain age, we all have a expectation of life will look like when we're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and all, what it's supposed to look like. And a lot of people just get stuck on that, and they keep repeating the cycle of trying to force that to happen.
Right.
So I have several female friends over the years. So this, if anybody's listening, this is not about you. Probably it's about the spectrum of these women. So these are not relationship friends, just friends that are women.
Okay.
And I am always fascinated by they keep choosing, and a lot of my male friends do it too, choosing the same guy over and over again because he matches the expectations of what they had when they were 14.
Well, that's common. I mean, a
Yeah, very
lot of
common.
people engage in that.
Yeah, not just women. I'm not trying to pick on the
Oh
women.
no, it's both genders.
Yeah, but particularly, they keep finding the same men. It's like,
Right.
okay, this guy looks like so when I was talking to one of my friends about what's the most important thing, obviously honesty and communication. I said, check, that's good. So, we're trying to, after her last rough breakup, which was about 3 months ago, she was devastated. She called me and said, what am I going to do? And I said, well, have you thought about not dating for a while? Why don't we try
Mhm.
that? Because the last 3 in a row have been terrible.
Yeah.
She vetoed that idea quickly.
Okay.
And she said, no, I think I need to, number one, a good communicator, somebody that understands me emotionally. I said,
Hmm.
okay. And then, so one of her things is she's a doctor, and she makes a lot of money. And what she keeps finding these men that, not be critical of income, but she's making a couple $100,000 a year and they're making 42,000.
Hmm.
So then that sets up a resentment that she pays for everything. He doesn't
Mm.
contribute at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, so we've not this solely based on income, but we need to make sure somebody's roughly closer, just somebody can pay their way, because it gets annoying to do the other way. So
Hmm.
I'm out the other day. There's a restaurant here called Red Salt, really nice. In your Richmond, Virginia, Red Salt restaurant, fantastic.
Okay.
We're there. I run into this to her. She sees me. She said, "Oh, hi! I want you to meet my friend Tim." Tim looked almost identical to the last one.
Okay.
I shook Tim's hand, and I was like, "It's so nice to meet you, Tim." We talked. I walked off, and I just said, well, there we go again, one more
Hmm.
time. So she
Hmm.
texted me later. She said, "Why didn't you sit down and join us?" I go, because in about 3 minutes, I was going to tell you Tim is the exact same guy as the last 3 guys, and you're going to get mad at me. So I didn't want to do all that. She goes, he most certainly is not. I go, okay, what does he do? What does he do for a living? He goes, well, he's an assistant golf coach at one of the high schools.
Mhm.
Not making fun of any careers.
No.
I said, okay. It's just,
But there it is right there.
there it is right there. And of course, you know, they're in the cycle of, she still thinks this is going to work, because it's more the look that she remembers, that she's focused on, versus the substance. And
which I can understand. I mean, many people are affected by. I am.
Yeah.
I actually figured out I have a type. I didn't realize that, but I actually have a type.
We all do. Yeah. Some people don't, but most people have some preference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like not crazy. That's what I'm.
That's good. I like that criteria. Yeah.
I've had so much crazy that I just, one of my prerequisites is no crazy. So, but again, these are friends. I'm not making fun. I'm just simply saying we keep, letting go of expectations or how it's supposed to look.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you don't. I told her, she's like, well, the money isn't a big deal. I make plenty of money. I go, but yet you told me it was like number 2 or 3.
Right.
When it mattered. And because it isn't that it's not a big deal. He wants to talk fantasy football and you want to talk neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's just, he looks like the guy that you had a crush on when you're 14. And she sees it and she thinks this is going to somehow work out. And then she's starting to make some comments, like she was talking to him about something, and he goes, I don't really understand anything you say. And I said, okay, so now it begins.
Yeah.
Now, letting go of that, she's got to figure all that out herself, and it's not judgmental, but we do have a tendency to keep doing the same thing and then not letting go of the expectation that's, you can't make somebody who's an assistant golf coach understand the in-depth unless they wanted to study it, neuroscience and all the other stuff that goes along with the operation of the brain. It's you can't get upset that he don't talk about. So we'll sit there and we don't have much to talk about. He wants to talk about the upcoming football season, which he's not a gigantic fan. Mm-hmm. And she's like, a lot happened at work today. And he's like, well, I don't really understand what happens at your job. Mm. So it's like, she said, that feels like he's sort of disconnecting. And I go, probably. But she's got to play that out. But there's an idea in our brain, an expectation that exists that we have to defeat at some point. Because what are you really after? That's what we got to get to. So letting go of the old ideas and open up to what really matches now.
And part of that is being willing to recognize that it's there at all.
Yes.
We're blind. I mean, we can see it easily on somebody else, whatever the it is.
Of course.
We can, we're all good at it. I mean, you don't have to be a therapist or a coach or whatever in order to see that somebody else is struggling with problem X. And you can see it. Everybody can see it. The only one who can't see it is the person who's got it.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge challenge. I mean, even if you have in her case, you have a friend, who's pointing out that she's got this and she still can't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the rest of us will say, well, how can that possibly be? But when you're in her shoes, it's a lot easier to appreciate it because, well, yeah, that's kind of, I see what you're saying, but the mind says, well, that's not all that important. What's important is that the other attraction is there. And so that part will kind of iron itself out, which it doesn't, but that we kind of rationalize these things. Right. And that's how we become blind to them.
Well, and that's becomes the perspective that we need to look at. And we all make these mistakes. We all, one of the things that I'm dealing with a lot of my young clients, they often, when they're really young, they have their little break, not little, I'm not trying to minimize, they have a breakup and it's very intense. I'll never have all that. And so trying to get them from their programming of, like, I'm 19. I lost my girlfriend, broke up with me. I'll never have another relationship. My life's over. No, you're 19. You're going to have like 87 more of these.
Yeah. Right.
And trust me, they get a lot easier after about the 50th. It's like whatever. But that first one hurts the most. And because there was an expectation attached to that, you can't really let go of that expectation is the problem. It's not usually the thing as much as it is the expectation of what you wanted from it. And that's, so letting go of people, letting go of ideas, letting go of your path. The fact that I'm sitting in Richmond, Virginia, doing a podcast with you on a Monday night, and having a full load of clients this week and the life I have seems totally illogical if you look at origin story.
Right, where you came from.
Yeah. There's no pathway to connect this if you don't know that what happened.
Right.
It makes no sense. It's like if you started the chapter 1 of the book and then went to the final chapter, and tonight's the final chapter, you're going to go, there's no way possible that happened. But I didn't get stuck on any one path. I was sort of grateful that I had the gift of no path. I had no expectation.
No path.
I had nowhere to go. So it was like, okay. I mean, there was very limited choices for me.
Yeah.
But the idea that getting what you want is often best achieved to letting go of it.
And the letting go part has a few components to it. One piece of the letting go is kind of what we've been talking about, being aware, becoming aware of something that you're hanging on to without realizing that you're hanging on to it. Another piece of it, I think, is being aware that other people are hanging on to their thing, and that's potentially going to get in the way of you getting your thing.
Yes.
I mean, that's part of what compatibility is really all about. But we tend to dismiss these things because if we find, the key pieces, the type, if you will, especially with a personal relationship and a primary relationship, if we can find that one person who's that right type, and we respond to them, and it starts to build chemistry and so forth, it's almost like we get blind. Like we pay no attention to the stuff that in our clear thought process we realize, well, that's never going to work.
Right.
But it's like we talk ourselves out of it in a sense. And that's the thing that's the hardest thing to let go of. The talking ourselves out of paying attention to the thing that's like saying, hey, I'm a red flag. Notice me.
But that's part of the subconscious where we're stuck subconsciously. The conscious brain can quickly move from that. But the subconscious brain is not easily adapted. It's slow to change. So when you're programmed to the same set of behaviors, the same type of person, you're going to keep getting that until you work on changing. Logically, when one of my friends years ago had a funny joke he told. This is early in my recovery. Things were still a little wild, but they were getting better. And he goes, when are you going to realize you just got to quit dating the Hooters girls? And I go, you're right. Our conversations, while they were often very fun and very attractive, our conversations were limited to their experiences. Not making fun again. It's just their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's different thought processes, different lifestyles, different personalities. Yeah.
Right. So I said, you're right. I really want to start dating somebody that's more about the connection, that we can talk and have a mutual understanding. I was still growing in my recovery. I was learning a lot of that stuff. And so he goes, that's a good idea. So he sees me at the movies 2 nights later with this new Hooters girl. And he goes, oh, how you doing? And as soon as I saw him, I was like, he goes, did we not talk about this? And she didn't really talk about it. And I go, that sounded good, but I was unable to bypass this. I was able to, but eventually I got away from that stage, thank God. And, and saw things differently, but letting go of something that is stuck in the subconscious brain is a much more difficult thing. When you're fearful of somebody leaving you or your life's dependent on another person, and letting go of them is not an option according to the subconscious brain.
Yeah, and there's the key word, fear.
Yes.
Because fear is, anytime that we're talking about something that we need to let go of, or something that's a block or a resistance point, it's a 100% guarantee fear is going on in the background in some form.
Yeah, fear is a driving emotion for so many things. Not letting go is adjacent to homeostasis. It's the idea that, okay, we're safe. Let's leave it alone. I can't I don't want to let go of what I got, even though the other thing's better. I just know what this is. So you get stuck in that for a long, long period of time, and you keep wondering why you're ending up at the same time. You know, like, why am I feeling this way? Why do I keep ending up with the same people? Why am I always broke? Or whatever that question is, it's never the question. It's what's going on in the subconscious brain that keeps attracting those situations.
Yeah.
And being able to let go of that is, again, one of the more difficult things to do.
I'm not terribly active on social media anymore. I am still a member of a Facebook group for single men, sometimes against my better judgment, but I am still a member of this group. And I kind of make it my mission to give the guys in the group a different message from what they normally get. The group was founded by somebody who professionally provides coaching and advice and so forth to single men, and what she teaches is mostly good stuff. So that's why I like being in the group. There's some stuff that is taught within the group by other group members that I definitely have a problem with, but that's another story. But one thing that I do encounter quite a bit is situations where, you know, one of the guys will post about how, you know, he met this girl and it didn't quite work out, or he's trying to figure something out with her, or why is she responding this way? You get a lot of that kind of stuff. And at times I'll encounter a situation where what he's posting basically tells me he's stuck in that type we were talking about, right? Okay, he knows what his type is. He's found somebody who's that type, and then he can't figure out why it isn't working out the way he wanted it to work out. And the question I like to ask, I don't know why I like asking this, because I rarely get the answer I'm looking for. But the question I like to ask is, why? What is it about this particular woman that you really want? What is it that you really, really want? Not just that instant type, that instant attraction. What do you want out of the relationship? The most astonishing part about asking that question is how rarely I get an honest reply on it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because when we're in that stuck mindset where we're playing that unconscious mind game that you were talking about, it's like we blind ourselves to those questions.
Completely. And that's what we have to, you know, we think we know what we want. We have we have a narrative of what it looks like, and a lot. Okay, so here's a good example, if this makes any sense. So I work with a family that they have this gigantic mining company. They do mining of all different minerals and stuff like that. It's a privately owned company. It's very, very valuable. And generations of the family, 3 or 4 generations of the family have owned it. So the entire family's world is that company. They're owning that company. So I'm working with the current, you know, the dad that's, you know, that is currently CEO of the company. And he spent his lifetime gaining control of this company from his siblings. So this is his company now.
Okay.
And there's a couple of offers on the table for just an absurd amount of money. I mean, not $1 billion, but you're flirting with it, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
And
9 figures.
Yeah. And you're flirting with it. You got so many, everybody could easily walk with, you know, $50 to $100 million and set forever.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah. And so I'm like, why don't you do that? This company has caused you stress. It's fighting among your children. It's fighting among all your siblings. Why don't we cash it out? You go do whatever you want to do. But he is so programmed, his life, his expectation, the definition of life for him is this company. And that's all he can see. And everybody else is the same way. Like, even if you were to give them, you know, the $100 million a piece, they never ever have to consider working again or doing anything. You know, they can do whatever they wanted to do. But no, it's still about that. So they were programmed to believe this is it. So using that extreme example, we have a similar programming to what we're expecting in other people. And then when somebody comes along, we think they match. It's not really what we're after. But that, like, if your mom told you this as a child, that's one of the metrics you're looking for. It wasn't your metric, it was your mom's metric.
Right. And distinguishing between what your metric is and what her metric is, especially if it was pretty deeply ingrained, that can be a challenge.
Oh yeah.
that can be really hard to tell one from the other.
Because again, we're in that subconscious mind where you don't have access to it. So
Mm.
you think you do, you think you know what it's saying, but no, it's leading in a certain way. And that's why repetitive behavior and doing things over and over again and being able to being able to let go of behaviors that don't serve you is so hard. Addiction is so hard to stop because it serves a purpose. We don't understand what it serves, but most addictions started with people medicating away from problems or whatever, using drugs to distance. Then the medication or substance became the problem, and you think all I got to do is stop that now, but you still got to address the underlying origin, and most people don't do that.
Right, right. Now, Jen, when she came up with this topic, the example she gave was you're in a relationship or you're in a series of relationships perhaps, and you keep chasing emotionally unavailable partners, thinking you can fix them or make them stay in some way.
Right.
So let's zero in on that one because that's a fairly common pattern. That
It
happens
is.
with a lot of people, particularly with a male who's emotionally unavailable because there's the whole male what's the word I'm looking for? The masculine, the strong masculine type, the stoic one, which usually translates to, it's not really true stoicism. It translates to, emotions shut down, emotions repressed, because honestly, that's like what her father was like, and that's why she likes that so much, and it makes her feel safe.
Well, you basically broke it down for us there. So, unfortunately, males and in most cultures, some cultures, it's still deeply ingrained that males are not supposed to cry. They keep their emotions to themselves. They're supposed to overcome. They're supposed to grit their teeth and just move on. No
Right.
matter what happens, no matter what trauma they have, they're supposed to do that. So that is deeply ingrained. I mean, that is ingrained on a level that is just, it's so hard to breach. You got a lot of work to do. So a lot of women witness their dads be that same person. So they subconsciously keep being attracted to that person. They don't realize it, but their dad modeled that behavior. They seek it out, and then that's their metric that they don't understand that they're looking for. A masculine, manly man,
Right.
and it's like they're never going to be emotionally available until they do some major work, but they're not likely to do it.
And the really odd thing is that the moment that they start doing that work, they become a somewhat different person from what she originally was attracted to.
And then you think when they become emotionally available, then it's probably there'll be a subconscious lack of attraction from the other side,
Right.
because the attraction was built on the stuff they didn't want anyway. And that's the big cycle. It's like, the one of the things that I work with, and a lot of my professional athletes are African American. They're great people. They work really hard. A lot of them came from some really dark places and
Right.
they worked their way up. And I mean, they're dedicated. They're great people. So what happens is, often in the African American community, you never go see a psychiatrist ever or therapy.
Right.
No,
Right.
we're men. We handle our business. We go on. So how I become effective working with them, I'm not a therapist. I'm a life coach. Now, coaching, they can be on board with. They like coaching. Now, a lot of the strategy is going to be the same. It doesn't matter because now there's a narrative to get to there.
It has a different label.
Yeah. So I get a lot of connections with that because they'll say, "Oh no, he's not a therapist. He's a life coach," and that perspective blocks that subconscious programming that we're not there. So.
And I'm willing to bet that you don't actually tell them that you used to be a therapist. You want to leave that out of the conversation entirely.
Yeah. No, I just simply say I'm a life coach. I use a life coaching model. Here's what I do, and it works real well. Now, do we do a lot of stuff in therapy? Absolutely, but it's under the guise of life coaching, and it's under the guise of I phrase it differently than a therapist would, but we're getting to the same place. So
here's a question that comes up that I think ties in directly with Jen's question, because Jen's question is, what about situations where you're involved with somebody who is emotionally unavailable and you want to fix them or you want to try to make them stay in some way, and of course it works out badly for the reasons we've been talking about here.
Right.
So one of the things that I encounter in the singles men's group that I was telling you about on Facebook, there are a number of guys there who openly advocate this emotionally repressed dominant masculinity machismo kind of approach.
Sure.
And that's actually the one that I stand up against most. But that's another topic entirely. We won't go there. The main point that I want to bring up is this is not something that is just past history. This is current. It's going on right now, and I would say in many ways it's actually the majority narrative, the most common narrative out there at the moment.
It is actually, yes.
And there's a really interesting piece that goes along with it, because there are so many women who are attracted to this. You do end up in situations, and I have to give their camp, the other camp, the machismo camp, I have to give them credit on this one thing, because they are right about this one thing. They're right that there are many women who will talk about wanting to have relationships with emotionally available men, but they will get swept up by the men who are not emotionally available. And that's why you should be a non-emotionally available male from their perspective.
Absolutely. You just nailed that's the dilemma. That's what we're stuck in now. Social media exacerbates that.
Right. So here's the challenge then. If you are one of those women who are attracted to that non-emotionally available male and then hoping to change him and running into the same problem over and over again where it just doesn't work, what do you do?
First of all, the step one is realizing you can't change anybody. It's hard to change yourself. It's very hard to change. It's impossible to change another human being. So you got to start with that premise, and then you got to readjust the people you're attracted to, or the people you're going and talking to. You got to reframe all that, rechange, because otherwise, this is the cycle that everybody's stuck in right now. Relationships there's less and less people getting married. I mean, I know a lot of clients that my male clients who predominantly I work with males, but some females as well. They're like, look, it's not worth it. It's just too much drama. It's too much stuff. It's just, at some point maybe, but they're a lot of guys have quit even trying. It's just, it's like, no, I'd rather hang out with my buddies and go do this other stuff. And it's a phenomenon because the expectations of social media make a lot of people step back and say, I can't compete with all this. And they stop. And so the going after the guy with the 2 sleeve tattoos on both arms and the rah go, I'm tough, I'll do that. As long as that image is what you're after, you're going to keep recycling that because that's who it's going to be. Or if you keep dating your father who was emotionally unhealthy, you're definitely going to keep repeating that. And of course, metaphorically dating your father.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want the audience to write in about that one, but
if they do, this time it's Joel not Walter.
Yeah.
Put that out
there. But it's just this perspective that when we realize step one of all of this, I always break down things on step. You must stop everything and work on the belief that you can change somebody. That's the problem. That's where you got to start. You got to get preemptive, pre-game, whatever you want to call it, before the event happens. I can't change anybody. So when I meet somebody and they automatically go to, like, one time I was dating this lady, and it's really nice. She had been cheated on by her previous 2 relationships. So I'm not going to cheat. If I'm in a relationship, I'm not going to cheat. So that's just, I don't have time. That's too much effort. Right. So she told me that that's what happened to her, and I said, well, I'm definitely not going to cheat, but I don't want to feel like I'm being tracked or where are you, where are you at, and questioned every time, because I have a very active lifestyle. I do doing different things, especially at the time I was running a treatment center in South Carolina, and I just had a lot of stuff going on. So as we were dating, I noticed more and more time, like, where are you at? Like, we only got to spend 12 hours together last week. Like, she's keeping hours. And I told her, I said, that's not going to bode well for me. I'm just letting you know, it's busy week last week. So anyway, I had a house that was about 12 miles away from where our treatment center was. And behind the treatment center was this little cottage that had a bed and for like the house manager. So the house manager was out of town. And I had a client that flew into Charlotte Airport, and I needed to pick up on a Friday night at about 11:30. His plane was about an hour late. We picked up his luggage. Didn't get back to the cottage until about to the treatment center until about 2
Okay.
in the morning. I said, I'm not driving back home. Got to be here in the morning. So I go in the cottage. There's 2 beds up there. I fell asleep. So the next morning, I'm awakened by her calling.
Mm.
And so I wake up. I'm sort of, when you're awakened by a phone call, she said, hey, where are you at? And I go, I'm at home. And then she starts screaming, you're not at home. I'm in your driveway. Where are you at? I know you were lying. I know you're cheating. And I'm like, oh. I said, actually, when I said home, I woke up. I'm in the cottage behind the treatment center. And beyond that, I don't owe you another explanation. I don't. So I didn't lie to you.
Nope.
And the fact that you pulled up in my driveway checking on me really, and she said, I just don't know if I can trust you. And I said, well, then we need to just stop right now. We just need to stop, because what you're doing is going to push me away. And then I'm going to be, what I'm doing is going to push you further away.
Right.
So we're in a sort of a vortex of this not working. So I agreed to stop seeing her. She did not initially agree, but that we ended it right there, because I'm like, my job, I might have to get up and when I wake up and I'm from a cold sleep, where are you at? And I say, I'm at home. I'm not lying. I really thought I was at home for a second. You wake up in bed, you don't, you're like, oh, wait, I stayed at this treatment center that night. So.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
Yeah.
What you're touching on indirectly as well is that when we get caught up in these circumstances, like where she felt like she was entitled to know where you were at all times because she was checking on you, that you wanted to make sure you were always true to her and so forth, we kind of skip over a key piece there, which is at the core, she didn't really trust you. No matter what your behavior was, she didn't really trust you.
Well, that was the point. She didn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
And so whoever she was going to date, her relationships were going to keep ending the way they've ended because she didn't trust.
So it doesn't really matter whether you're attracted to a male who's not emotionally available or a male who is emotionally available. If you're going in with a primary sense of a lack of trust, how can that work?
It can't.
It can't.
It can't. So
now, and we can flip it around the other way too, right? Like one of the most common storylines that I hear about from single men is how they first of all believe, this part boggles my mind. They first of all believe that they should not be doing anything to try to move the relationship forward, that the relationship is her job. His job is to escalate sexually, or her job is to figure out the relationship. And the first thought that goes to my mind whenever I hear that is, what do you think that's going to turn into?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even get to step B with that one. I can't even figure out where step B is going to go on that one.
Well, and I have a questionnaire. I work with this couple, and I don't do couples counseling because it's just one of the worst things you ever do. But with clients that I've had a while, I will do pre-marriage counseling using, to explain, like, let's say my client's name's John. He's marrying Mary.
Okay.
John is been my client for a while. I explained to Mary, like, look, John's my client, but I want to ask, I got some thought-provoking questions for both sides and things that normally come up. And so when I ask the questions about tell me what you see happening in a relationship. What's the day-to-day? What does this look like?
Right.
And you'll be shocked at the different stories they have.
Yeah.
What does it look like to you? I want to get up and, like John said, I want to get up and continue to go to the gym in the morning. I'll go to work. We'll come home. I'll help with dishes, which John is not going to help with dishes, but that doesn't matter right now. I'll do this part, and they're talking about it. And I'm going, and she said, well, I said, what about John's plan? Do you like and not like? Well, I like the idea that he wants to go to the gym in the morning, but every morning. And he goes, well, that's what I do right now. I said, but yeah, I mean, can we have some mornings together? And he says, well, you can go to the gym with me. Now, she doesn't go to the gym. So anyway, we have all, so it starts to unravel, and I have like 50 of those questions that I ask scenarios. And not to break them up, but just to simply say, we have to have an agreement here. And my last question is, do you implicitly trust the other person?
Yeah.
And they generally say yes, but as I dig a little deeper, it's probably no, a lot of
Mm.
time. So until that trust is there, then really everything else doesn't matter. So you can build trust. That's true. Relationships should allow you to build trust. You
Yep.
can't really, I don't trust very many people early, but once I trust you, I'm maybe even naively trustful. I don't, once I'm there, I don't put any more energy in trusting. I'm there, always trust them. And until I have a reason not to. But
Right.
this idea that the image of relationships, what your dad was, what TV relationships are, those are images that we somehow think. When you watch a bunch of reality shows about marriage and relationships, and you're programming an unrealistic expectation. Not many people get to wake up on a Friday morning and hop on their private plane for dinner in Paris.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. So if you think that's going to happen, it's not. You're going to wake up on Friday morning. You got one more day of work. If you got young kids, you're going to be doing poopy diapers all weekend and get the house cleaned up. That's going to be reality. But it's not going to be this, everybody looking perfect, perfectly fit, driving, flying their plane, landing in Paris and having dinner and flying back for, the next morning. Not happening.
Yeah.
But those, you watch those other things, you think, why can't I have that? And it doesn't really exist. But you think because you watch it or see it or the image of other people, you think that's what it's supposed to be.
So we're driven by the image that is presented to us, and I can see that. I can see how that would happen. I think there's also the fact that we humans don't. How do I want to say that? We don't really have a good handle on who we are. And I say that because we've talked a lot, you and I, and me and my other co-hosts as well. We've talked a lot about how so many people have low self-confidence, low self-esteem. Well, those two things go hand in hand. If you don't really know yourself, you are going to have low self-confidence. If you don't really know what makes you tick, what drives you, what you like, what you dislike, all that kind of thing, you're going to have low self-confidence because you're going to feel like you're faking it, and you are faking it because you aren't even in touch with who you are.
Well, that's again, you're dead on. And that becomes the point. Like when I ask people, what do you want? You'll be shocked at how much silence is after that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, I want this.
Great way to quiet a room, by the way.
Yeah. What do you want? Well, I want a lot of money. Okay. Everybody wants a lot of money. So a lot of money is awesome. I love a lot of money. Sure. And what is that? How do you get it? What's the pathway to that? What does it look like? What are you willing to do? When I have somebody that says, I want a lot of money, but I want a work-life balance. And I said, okay, well, that's a goal.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's doable, but you got to have a plan it's got to be more intricate with that. Or what do you want in a relationship?
Or at least an idea. You might not even have the plan, but you gotta have at least some idea, some concept of how that could happen.
Yeah, I know people like one of the guys that I know makes a lot of money. He's a financial planner. Financial planners usually start off, they don't have any money. They have a little stipend in the beginning. And they usually are just cold calling people, hoping to get their $10,000 little teeny IRA or whatever they got. Right. And then work their way up. So the first 5 years of most financial planners' lives are struggle. A lot of work, a lot of having to do this dirty work at your firm. You're never getting the best leads. Right. That's what you normally get. But then it starts to build. Now you get to a point where it's on cruise control and you can have that work. So part of it is understanding, if I want a work-life balance and have a lot of money, can you accept there's going to be a 5-year period before that happens?
Yeah.
One of the highest paying professions in the world is commercial real estate.
True.
And, especially in New York City. However, the first 6 months you're in commercial real estate, $0.
Right.
I mean, it's 6 months is about how long it takes. If you got a deal day one, you won't get any money till closing 6 months later. usually.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you gotta be prepared for that. So the expectations of that are different. The expectation. So we start with expectations. We start with what we really want and be able to define it. Not always the define the essence of what we want, but be very specific. You don't have to find the direct pathway, but what am I looking for? What is the most important thing? Like, to me, if you ask me, what is the absolute most important thing in a relationship? I love to connect deeply with people and have deep conversations. That's my thing. I
I'm
like
with
to
you.
go out to have a nice dinner, go sit at the beach, and just talk about philosophy or politics or anything, just theory or just
Mhm.
life and stuff like that. I love that. I can talk for hours. It's something that I enjoy when it's topics I love.
I
Uh,
know something about that. I've done a few shows with you.
yes, exactly. So I can start with that. I want to be able to connect with somebody. I want to be able to eventually get to a point of trusting somebody. Those are number one. I mean, that whole category is number one for me because I get bored with traditional silliness, like
Mhm.
basic stuff. I don't want to watch reality TV with you. I don't want to, now I'm not saying I don't care if somebody else watches reality TV, but I can't do it. I just,
Yeah.
it's all absurd. I
If
start
you want
putting,
to turn my attention off real fast, turn on a reality TV program. I'll be gone
absolutely.
in about a minute.
Yeah. It's 99% of the shows are scripted. It's not really reality. It's
Yeah,
silly.
that's the weirdest part.
Yeah, I laugh at them because they're so scripted. And,
Yeah.
I know a psychologist that works for one of the shows that does the scripting to
Do you
create
really?
conflict. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. That's
Yeah,
fine.
they get
Yeah,
the scripts to create conflict because the conflict's what sells.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, there is something else that happens, and this does happen a lot in social media. I mentioned it because of that singles group I'm in, that men's group. I saw this just like within the last 24 hours. A guy posted about how I guess it was a video. It was a video or it was a article somewhere. I can't remember exactly, but the topic was Sigmund Freud's concept of the Oedipus complex.
Hmm.
And the gist of the post was that single men should learn about this as a way to do their own internal work. And as soon as I read that, I said to myself, these guys really don't know the history of that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still not quite sure how it popped up, but basically I said I don't recommend that. I think first of all the theory has been demonstrated to be nonsense. You just don't do that. That's just not the way to go. And I got a comment back that's from the guy who posted saying, "Well, what do you think I should put up instead?" And my response was just put up stuff that you actually have some data on, that you have some truth about. Don't post stuff that's nonsense. Don't post stuff that's been demonstrated to be not true.
Or the opposite. What he's posting is the opposite of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't want to insult him, so I tried not to say that in the immediate response, but that's where the next response is going. If you catch my drift, right?
No, definitely, and that's. But you'll see. By the way, I told you I got out of all those groups,
Yeah,
but
well, you're smarter than I am on this
yeah,
one, so I give you credit.
this most shocking discovery I made on Facebook. I belong to like 20 law of attraction groups. They're the least law of attraction. It's the opposite. It's just,
It's true.
and I can't exist in there because they're like, I can't quit talking. I mean, they weren't. I was hoping to be challenged or raised or taken to a level of stuff, and I'm like, no, we're missing the point. You got to go back
Mm.
to 101, group 101 for this. And but a lot of those groups do have people that usually the personalities that tend to rule those things can be a little harsh. Not always
Yeah.
have and so regardless of where you're getting it from, but the idea for all of this, the overall topic, the overall thing about being able to identify what you're after, really after and then put yourself in the vibration of that is the law of attraction concept. You can't be in the vibration of what you're trying to attract when it's the exact opposite you're talking to. It's like you
Yeah.
and that's the problem. Relationships nowadays, I mentioned this on the dating app. So when you look at a dating app,
Right.
the sole introduction on the dating app is a picture and a quote.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not really pretty or handsome, and maybe have a clever quote, then you get left behind. The process totally leaves out people connecting on an emotional or spiritual level. It totally takes that away.
Yeah.
And so one of my clients came up with a brilliant strategy. He's an average looking guy. He's nerdy, and he's a little Asperger's syndrome, very bright, very successful. He starts off with, I'm a geek. I like Star Wars. I like anime. He went through all the stuff that would just, I am intimidated by women. He just went through the whole thing. He got hundreds of responses.
Really?
Just because he put all of his stuff out there, just the other way,
Yeah.
And a lot of the women that felt the same way felt comfortable reaching out to him. So yeah, I'm intimidated by all these, like, really, their picture, they're super jacked and they're got all this stuff, and I'm intimidated with, but I can relate to you. So he's had multiple dates, and one that he really thinks he's falling in love with, built on that profile, just putting it all out there. Just I'm ADHD. I'm a little this. I'm a little that. I'm very successful, but I'm very quirky, and it was shocking. But I think people are craving that honesty and that connection, but the apps don't generally deliver it.
And I think what you're touching on here is really the core to answering the question that Jen raised. Because I mean, revisiting the question that Jen raised, she was asking about, how do you handle it when you're in a relationship and you find yourself having, once again, chased an emotionally unavailable partner, thinking you could somehow fix them or make them stay in some way. And what this guy, your colleague, came up with was, I'm going to stop doing that kind of thing by just saying, this is who I really am.
Yeah.
And in so doing, he's basically saying, I feel good about who I am. I don't really give a crap whether or not this fits the social ideal. This is who I am. If you're going to love who I am, this is it. Which, by the way, is a tremendous statement of self-confidence. And I suspect that's why he got all those replies.
Well, yeah, and that's how I try to live. I joke when I say I'm a basket case. You know what I mean by that. I don't really. I know I'm all over the place. I know I'm intense. But those are qualities to me. That's the. So I don't. I have a sense of humor. So I sort of make fun of myself, but it's not really. I'm very confident in my weirdness. That's not counterintuitive.
That's
and I'm not for everybody. I'm really not. And that's even better.
Well, not only is it better, it's if what you're really looking for is a relationship that you're going to like, well, first of all, when you do find somebody, you're not going to have to try to figure out how to make this emotionally unavailable partner emotionally available. You're not going to have to fix them. You're not going to have to try to figure out how to make them stay, because they're going to want to stay. They don't need the change because they're exactly the way you want them to be in the first place. And by the way, they're emotionally available.
Well, and that's the beauty of it is when you can, just, to me, the being comfortable with people. There was one of my clients and his family did this amazing documentary. We're going to have them on the show at some point, and about addiction and recovery. And I went to the premiere. It was at the Bird Theater here in Richmond.
Okay.
And like 500 people, 400 or 500 people showed up.
Wow.
So I had no idea there were going to be that many people there, because I usually don't go to those kind of events. So when I get there, everybody's gathered in front of the theater. Well, I have about 300 people that want to talk to me.
Wow.
And I don't want to talk. That was not what I wanted to do at that moment,
Yeah.
And so I was super awkward and uncomfortable, because I just was trying to look for a place to go escape.
Yeah, someplace. There's got to be an escape door here somewhere.
Yeah. So my client saw me and he goes, he's like, yeah, come on in, Joel, because they hadn't opened the door. So I just went and sat in the balcony where nobody was sitting and watched The Incredible. And afterwards, now, I'm not antisocial, but with the ADHD, I came for these people. I didn't want to be the center of that thing. And I felt like everybody wanted to talk to me and ask me questions about their kid and all this. And I just wanted to get upstairs and let my client and his family, which produced this incredible documentary, I want them to have the spot. And I didn't want all that. So, so the point behind that is when you go someplace, when you go to a situation, whether it's an event or you're looking or what, you don't want to go to something that's the opposite of what you want. So like for that, I don't normally go to those kind of things, but because of who the people were, I needed to be there. But as soon as I got there, I got away from it because I just, that was going to drain me. That was going to be way too draining. And I just sat up there and enjoyed the movie. It was very emotional. I was so proud of these people. And afterwards, I came down, gave them a hug, and took my Uber home. So, you know, and it was just this amazing event for them. But I when you put yourself in situations that aren't matching what you want, and that's whether it's in a crowd or at an event, like I don't like to go to concerts that don't have reserved seating. You know what I mean? So it's like just that when I was younger, I did. I just like to have a place. I like to have a place. And so just it's about knowing what you really want and learning how to attract what you really want, not the expectation that sometimes goes along with that. The expectation of that. And Jen's topic was very on point tonight with that understanding that, especially I have some people and friends that are in different cultures, and you know, there's some cultures where the females have no anything. They're not allowed to do anything, and so they're even in a more difficult position because the whole society is that way. And so that's a really hard place to be, and sometimes they can't leave. So you know that's I don't want to enter that negative, but it's a reality. But the general overall concept is really learning what you're after, really trying to be able to define that, and let go of anything that doesn't match it, and really understand what it doesn't match it. That's the thing. If you keep ending up with the same person, the same scenario, and breaking up for the same reason, it's subconscious that's causing it, and it's an expectation that's probably from childhood. We got to step away from that.
And that's the last concept I want to leave everybody with. When you get the same behavior over and over again, that's a flag.
Yes.
You can call it a red flag, you can call it a green flag, you can call it whatever kind of flag you want, but it's a flag. It's an indicator that you got something going on and that it's coming from you. It really doesn't have anything to do with the other person because you're the one who keeps experiencing it over and over.
That's the perfect way. The book that we had mentioned, The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins.
Right. Yeah.
Part of letting go is let them. And that concept goes together. So you nailed that perfectly. When you're able to realize we gotta let this happen. We gotta we're not going to fix everything. You can't fix all that, but really search for what you're after, not the expectation of that.
I love that. Yeah. So I think Jen's going to like this one, Joel. We hit the nail on the head again. So
I love this topic. It was great.
It was great. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.